So I want to thank all of you for being here at the opening of the Northwind Garden Bar. So well, why are we having a garden bar? We're not serving, we have some drinks for you. So we do have refreshments, but that's not the purpose of the bar. The idea of the garden bar was to find a way to have fun introducing new things we're doing at Northwind as we go into our next 30 years. So what is it that we have that's happening, but happening in kind of a plant-driven way? Again, because since we're not business people, we're not coming up with these marketing concepts of how to make money. We're coming up with plant-driven concepts of how, if you were a plant, how would you like humans to understand who you are? So that you could share with a human being, here's the way I live, here's the social system of living I've lived in on Earth, and if you can understand who I am and how I've related to plants since I appeared on Earth, you can become a loving, caring, joyful gardener. Not a laborer in the garden, or not yard work. We want to get rid of that phrase altogether, yard work. That was created in the 50s to sell you products. We want to get you away from the house. We want you to see the USA in your Chevrolet. Remember Dinah Shore? See the USA in your Chevrolet. That was get you away from the house. Because you don't want to do yard. They changed the language from gardening to yard work. So the idea now is all these plants are patiently waiting for you to know how to love them. They're not in any hurry. They're saying humans will understand someday how I can live in the earth and who I can live with socially, so we can have a collective, healthy way of sharing health with the plants in the social community so they look attractive to you. And at the same time, the plants are showing you that, demonstrating who they are socially. You're becoming much healthier because you're understanding their health and well-being, which makes you healthier. And then the byproduct of that is a healthy soil. Because the health of the soil is one simple thing. It's the living and dying of roots that are deep penetrating roots. It's not 8-inch turf grass that has an 8-inch penetrating root system. It's the deep penetration of roots into the earth and the living and dying of those roots. That's how we get healthy soil. And you're going to see that in the future, which is cool. We're not going to be doing soil tests for NPK anymore. NPK, why do we do soil tests for NPK? Well, anybody?
What is NPK?
Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Why do we do soil tests for that? That's because that's a chemically driven process. When you have agriculture is a chemically driven product. Anhydrous ammonia came out of World War II. They used that to instead of rotating crops, they could grow one crop, anhydrous ammonia, but the soils are declining because there's no more organic matter going in. The corn and soybeans take away more than they give. Every native plant that lived on Earth for the last 8,000 years gave more than it took. That's why the soils are so rich. That's why our crops are so healthy. The native plants gave more than they took. The corn and soybeans take more than they give. So at what point will that system keep functioning? How long can that go on? I don't know. I have no idea. But our future soil tests are soil biology. When you test the soil, it's the bacteria and fungus count in the soil. Who are they? How are they relating to each other? And how is that system going to change when you put plants in the ground and the living and dying of roots affects the soil biology? It affects the bacteria and fungus in the soil. And I don't know that much about it either. I'm learning and I'm trying to understand all this. But again, I don't want to become a soil scientist. I just wanted to put things in a good direction to be healthy. And I think all of you feel the same way. You want to find beauty in what you do, but you want to find all of us want to go in a direction to make something healthy, including ourselves and our family. So that's the kind of the way of thinking. How can we make things healthier? And how can you satisfy what your principles and your beliefs are as a gardener? Some people garden over here. I want birds and butterflies and insects. I'll do anything for the birds, butterflies, and insects. Some people garden over here. I want a Monet garden. I got to have a Monet. I want to be artistic. Some people garden over here. Can I mix vegetables in with my perennials? Can I make my vegetable garden look pretty? Is that something I can? You can be any kind of gardener you want. There's no rules. There's no There's no gardening law enforcement program that, no, you can't be that gardener. We got too many of those gardeners over there. You can be any kind of gardener you want. The only request I have is that you be a joyful gardener. And that when you're a joyful gardener, you share that with everybody. Make them sick of you hearing that. Everybody you know, I'm really having fun in my garden. I can't hear that anymore. We don't want to know about your fun in the garden because your communication will keep echoing and echoing other people's. It's not, my wife Aunt Maria told me this, when her and I talk, it's just not her and I talking. When her and I talk and we share what we talk about with other people, that conversation never ends. It keeps going and going and going. So when you tell people you're a joyful gardener, they ask you why. You can share a few things with them, not too much, because like already some people want to leave. Okay, Roy, we got to go. My truck's on fire. I got to get going. And I understand that. But I think if you're joyful doing something, that's good. And to share that is important. So what we've in time come up with, I wrote a book called The No Maintenance Perennial Garden because I've grown probably over 18 to 19 million perennials since 1978. And from 1978, I'm an outdoor ed teacher. I never took a hort class. Everything I learned from the plants, I learned from the plants. And all I did was pay attention. When you put them in the ground, how they lived, how their foliage developed, at what rate their foliage developed compared to the plants next to them. Each plant has a growth rate and growth habit. When you put them in the ground from a container, they all grow differently. But as you're around them enough, you get to understand the growth rate and growth habit of every plant from youth to maturity. So I understood that because I grew the plants. I never designed anything until the late 90s, mid 90s, and that was a prairie garden. I designed a few prairie gardens for Grand Geneva. Then I started doing more and more design simply because I could get the social systems right. I could get the growth rate and growth habit together. So the plants shared resources instead of confiscating resources from a neighbor, shading it out and killing it and taking over, or reseeding aggressively or spreading by rhizomes. So by growing plants, I got to find out who the thugs and bullies were too. There's a lot of plants out and they can't help it. That's their nature, is to reseed aggressively. And they simply reseed aggressively because they're the plant that heals scarred earth. Say a tree falls on the ground and it smothers out the plants that it's underneath. As the tree oxidizes and disappears, the quick establishing plants come up and shade out the soil so the sun doesn't solarize the soil. So that we need quick reseeding plants as part of a plant community. They're the healing plants in a disturbed community. That's how we got weeds. So when you know the aggressive plants, their nature, they're going from youth to maturity, and that's not really a lot. I mean, look at how much effort you put into having friends. You put a lot. You just don't befriend somebody because they have a yellow car. Wow, that guy's got a yellow car. Oh, excuse me, I'd like to be your best friend. Or you don't befriend somebody because they wear the right clothing or because they shop at the right store. Why do you befriend people? Why do you do it? Wouldn't it be better to have no friends at all? Get away from me. I don't want any friends. I got stuff to do. Why do you befriend people? Yes, you have the answer to that. You want to share who you are with someone, and you want someone to encourage you to be who you are. At the same time, you're encouraging someone to be who they are. Be true to yourself. And when you have friends, they encourage you. Yeah, do that. Buy that. Have that. Be that. And if you don't have friends, without that encouragement, you might not do anything. Because I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to screw it up. And at the same time, you're encouraging your friends to do that too. That's sharing. Who in here doesn't you all want to share who you are? And the love you have to give and the love they have to give to you. That's friends. You got to have friends. And plants have been on Earth in the same way. They've all lived socially connected together, intimately connected together. Nowhere in the temperate zone is there soil exposed to sunlight. Intimacy. The only time soil started getting exposed to sunlight is when human beings started gardening. And mostly in America, because we're not a nation of gardeners. We never got that opportunity. That doesn't, we can call ourselves, all of us can be called, you can say you're a gardener. I can say I'm an astronaut. You know, and someone's got to prove me wrong. I can keep saying it until someone says, no, you're not. But yes, I am. I'm an astronaut. But we never had the chance to become a nation of gardeners because of World War II. We're such a young nation, and we immigrated here from every country in the world, but when we got here, our families had to do different things than they could in Europe and all the other countries they came from. When you go to Europe, when I was in Holland, I saw people outside the house at 7:15 with pruners talking to their kids on a Wednesday. I'm thinking they must have some special event happening in Umelo. Why would they be outside pruning at 7 in the morning on a Wednesday? So I went back and asked Pete, I go, Pete, yeah, there's someone outside the houses, little homes, people were out there. He goes, what do you mean? I go, what's coming up? So what big event you have? And he said, he looked at me like this, Roy, that's our culture. When we come home at 5 o'clock, 5:15, we go out in the yard with the family, we talk about the day as we're gardening. So they're pruning, refreshments come out, a plate of food. That's just how they live. They can't help that. They've done that for centuries. That's their nature. We never had that opportunity. We were close to that, and then World War II came. We had gardening magazines. We talked about gardening with the family outside, and it was vegetables, shrubs, it was everything. But it would be outside with our family, just the way the family shares the living room. The family shares the dining room. The family shares the kitchen. The outside had that same value. And then came the 50s, Dinosaur, see the USA in your Chevrolet, insecticides, pesticides, yard work, Scots, clean turf, chemicals, fertilizers. So if you're a man born after 1950, you don't reach adulthood until you get a drop spreader and a riding mower. That's the way it's all figured out. You can't be an adult male without a drop spreader and a riding mower, and maybe an edger, but it's got to have a motor on it. Men don't like to do a lot of things without motors. You got to have a 2-cycle engine. You got to have a little motor running somewhere, and that's not because men want to do that. That's because marketing. We were told that's the way we should be. That's where we should spend our time, and that's simply what happened. And that's all changing now. And that's the beauty of where we're at right now. We're in the most transformational period of horticulture that ever existed on Earth. You're living in it, so you don't quite see it. Things are changing dramatically. And I can tell you here at Northwind, we've been here 30 years, how the hell could 3 people as dumb as we are stay in business 30 years? And when you walk around these benches, what plant on here have you ever heard of, recognized, or would ever buy here? How many have came out here today to get Cephalaria gigantea? None of you. Well, how the heck can we make any money selling it? We don't. But yet it's here for you to understand and come to know. We're the other traditional places that sell you all the stuff that comes from proving this and proving that and having this and having that with all the, those are good plants, but they're not regional. And our first goal is to grow plants that know how to live in southeast Wisconsin and northern Illinois. They have an identity of how to live here. We don't sell delphiniums. And people go, why don't you have delphiniums, Roy? I said, if delphiniums lived, don't you think you'd see them everywhere? Who would not want delphiniums in their backyard? They don't live here. You could treat them as an annual, maybe a biennial, keep putting them in, but that's okay. We have one delphinium, Delphinium exaltatum, we sell. That will live here. It's native to woodland edges. But none of you know that, do you? Well, how the hell are we going to make any money if we're selling stuff nobody wants? Well, the idea is that we're putting together this process, and I'm proud of the garden bar. The garden bar actually is going to introduce all of Northwind's new programs that we're going to talk about, container gardening, everything that Northwind wants to share with you. Come on up to the garden bar, have a drink with us. And right now we're introducing perennial plant patterns at Northwind. So what is a perennial plant pattern? Basically, I came up with, I did my book, I put patterns in my book, and they're simply plants laid out so they can live well together. They socially will grow into each other, and it's like a cookbook. So if I asked you to make an angel food cake, I said, make an angel food cake. Here's all the ingredients to the angel food cake. But I forget to give you one thing. How much of everything to put in? What would you do? You'd have to keep trying, wouldn't you? Should I put a cup of flour, half a cup of flour? How much sugar should I? You know it needs sugar. It says right there you need sugar. But how much do you put in? You don't know. So how long would it be before you had an angel food cake you could share with your family to eat? It could take a couple years before you came up with an angel food cake you could eat, right? So when I see people walk around the gardens, how do people buy plants? And this isn't meant to be an insult, because maybe your parents did something different than my parents did. When I was 12 or 14 years old, my mom and dad said, Roy, sit down here. It's time we talk to you about how to buy perennials. That never happened in my lifetime. They never had that conversation with me. I had to figure that out on my own. How do I put plants together? And simply I learned by going to remnant prairies. So if you ever want inspiration, go to Chilwaukee Prairie, right on the lake. You'll see Chicago 200 years earlier. And there's nothing more beautiful. Right now, if you go to Chilwaukee Prairie, it should be called, all the shooting stars are in bloom as far as you can see. And tell me if you don't tear up when you see that beauty. And if you go there in the fall, the liatris and the veronicastrums, as far as you can see liatris. That's what was once here everywhere. Messick prairies were as far as you could see going into Iowa, through Iowa. But when you see that, that influences the aesthetics of what you may believe to be beautiful. Or it could be a painting, like I look at painters, Pierre Bonnard, and I see the beauty of his painting, and I can create gardens based on the color tones and changes of his painting. He helps me get momentum going. So when I wrote the book, what I put in the book, I put in 72 plants that you'd have to make the effort to kill. You'd have to go out in the garden and say, I'm going to kill you. That they live through everything you don't know about them. And what you don't know about them, they don't know about you. So when you put the plant in the ground, you learn from each other. As the plant matures, you're understanding that plant better and more. You're seeing it visually change. You're watching it become an adult. You're seeing that growth, and that growth you're seeing within yourself too. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing something. I'm as dumb as a stick about a lot of things. But I seek out how to get that information. If I'm curious about something, I'm tremendously curious. I think that's good and bad. I'm curious about so many things. Like, why are you even here today? What made you come out here today on a Sunday? I'm very curious. But with that curiosity, that helps stimulate every plant I find. I see possibilities for it. And I got that word possibilities. They say, when is my garden going to be done? What? Your garden, and I think your life too, is never done until you run out of possibilities for yourself and for your garden, right? Your garden is never done until your possibilities for whatever it is you want to do are gone. Then it's over. And that's the same way for how we live. When is the possibilities for who you want to be and what you're going to do with yourself? It's never going to run out. It's never going to end. So I think that's what gardens are about. So when I looked at these little grids, I thought, well, I put together small, I call them little patterns, mini grids. And the idea of each mini grid is I put 3 or 4 plants together socially that when you place them together has kind of an impressionistic feeling, a Monet moment. And also the plants share resources and light well together so they'll live well together. And a lot of times people will buy, like, did you buy these?
Going to.
Oh, okay. She's going to buy this verbascum. So what are you going to do with this? And who's it going to live with? And how long will this plant live a good shared life with the plant she puts it with? So that's always the question when you pick up a plant and you like who that plant is. It had a romantic moment with you. Wow, I like this plant. And when you have that romantic moment, then that's the thing that comes to your thoughts. Who am I going to put you with? What kind of social way of living? And that's kind of an odd way to talk about a garden. Some people, oh, just throw it in the ground, Roy. See what happens. But if you put it with the wrong group of plants, that group of plants might shade it out, steal all its resources. And then what does that mean for you as a gardener? labor. As soon as you keep putting the wrong plants together, you got too many fights going on for sunlight, for nutrients, for water, moisture. You got to water this one, you don't water that one. I got to water this, I can't water that. I got to prune this one, I got to cut this one, it's spreading too fast. Oh my God, that one reseeded everywhere. What am I going to do over here? Now I got to take all that out. It just becomes, gardening isn't joyful. Because the plants have not, and they haven't done any of that to hurt your feelings, it's just what they do. So without knowledge of plants and without understanding, like this verbascum, if you really don't know what the future of this plant's going to be, how will you know who to put it with to have a future at all? And verbascum, this particular verbascum, can be short-lived, depending on if the soil doesn't drain right. But this verbascum phaneocium, what it does, it reseeds everywhere. So you're always going to have it in the garden. But if you put it in too early with young plants, you might have too many seedlings that you have to be hoeing out. So usually when I use this verbascum, I put it in older gardens. Because an older garden, the plants are mature, they're young, they're old adults. It's like if I had a room full of 20, 30-year-old men and women, and they were all bullies. Kind of just hitting each other. They just hardly get along with people. You know, and I take a 4-year-old that's hard to get along with, maybe. If I throw that 4-year-old in a room with adults, who's going to win? The adults will win. Even though the 4-year-old's a tough 4-year-old, he can't compete with 30 and 20-year-old adults who are tougher and older, bigger. So when you put a plant in that's going to seed everywhere, and you have young plants all through here, who's going to be covering all the garden in the future? The reseeder. So that's why when you come to know plants, understand what they do in the future, you understand how they reproduce, what their vegetative rhizome, short rhizome, and that's what you read about. If it's not on the sign, you ask about. And that's what I put in the book too. But I figured the easiest way to do it is just create some recipe cards. And you can take each recipe card and you can put them together and make a little bigger garden, because I always tell people, start small. Don't overwhelm yourself and do something too big, because that might be too much for you to take care of. Or you can use each card too, the small ones, and you can accent an older garden. If you find the flowering time, like on this particular Echinacea monarda, this would be mid-June to mid-July. Maybe there's not something flowering maybe you have less entertainment flower-wise in your garden in mid-June and July, or you want to enhance the flowering time, so you can put that grid within the garden. But the beauty of that grid, no matter where you put it, it's going to silently, not verbally, but it's going to silently share with you a social way of living. And when you see two plants coming up together with a social way of living, sharing light, sharing resources, you'll say to yourself, maybe I need to do more of that with all my gardens. Maybe I need to understand a social way of living and start moving in plants that are more cooperative with the plants you have or the plants you like. So you'll start moving in the direction of becoming a gardener. Because that's what all gardeners do. When I look at in Europe, oh, here. When I was in Europe visiting Pete Outoff in 2007, I saw this in a barrel like that. I had no idea what this was. So Pete goes, take it out of the barrel, take a look at it, Roy. So I'm like this, I go, looks like a hoe. And I've been hoeing since 78, that was 2008, so 88, 98, 30 years I've been hoeing with this hoe. Well, this is your hoeing posture. With the agricultural hoe, I've been using that, and I saw this, and I started pushing on the floor, and the first thing I realized, I'm standing upright. I'm not hunched over with the agricultural hoe. So I'm going this, and I'm hoeing, and so then I started crying, Because for 25 years I was killing myself. And I said, why aren't these in America? Why? Nowhere. You can travel to New York, head to New York, stop in every Home Depot, you're not going to find this anywhere. Chalet has them now in Chicago. They carry these. So I asked Pete, I go, why aren't these in America? Because, Roy, you're not a nation of gardeners. You're farmers. And we went from farming to urban quickly in the 50s. We became more dominantly urban in the 50s than we did agriculture. So I bought 5 of them immediately, and this transformed my life. Because now we do about 1,000 square feet. We hold about 1,000 square feet in about 75, 80 minutes. One person. Because you just keep going around. And then the key is while you're hoeing, people see me hoeing, they go, that poor guy couldn't get out of high school. Isn't that a shame? That old guy. See, Bobby? That's why you need to finish school. You could be like that old guy hoeing over there. Because in America, we have no regards for gardeners. Landscapers are just people that keep the earth neat and tidy. They pick up sticks, they mow, they trim stuff, they sweep, they blow. In Europe, gardener sits at the highest seat at the table. If you're developing any kind of property, there's a gardener there, professional gardener, right up here. It's not the last person you call to say, can you spread some wood mulch around, and can you trim my bush round? Well, no, I don't want to trim your bush round. I don't want to trim your bush square. But I tell you what I will do, I'll prune it for you, and we'll shape it for you, and we'll give it some kind of a look that might be more enjoyable for you. And some people say, no, just make it round. I'm in a hurry. I don't care. Okay. And some people, you can do that. And that's when I see this change in America now, this transformational, because now we're on the side, more people want that than they want things trimmed round and turned into juji fruits. 60s, 70s, everything was a juji fruit or a gumdrop. We have many more people that want to see the shape of a shrub, enjoy the health of a tree. This is happening. And we're actually finding ways of paying for knowledge. And when you pay for knowledge, your costs go down. When you start planting with a grid system and you're putting plants into, say, socially live well together, the plants are going to wave to you and say, look, you've used the hoe, you've kept the weeds out the whole month of May, you've really been there for us. Mid-June, we're collectively touching together, we're cutting sunlight down from hitting the soil. Go bowling, do some other things for a while. Because the perennials now will shade out the earth. No weed seeds will be germinating when the foot candles of light drop below 1,500 foot candles of light hitting the ground. So now you have a cooperative garden. The perennials are now being more responsible for their own well-being. They're not 3 feet apart surrounded by wood. And the weeds keep coming up through the wood. The wood chips don't stop weeds. They encourage weeds. They break down, they create organic matter. The richer your soil, the more weeds you're going to have. So, and with this Dutch hoe, we hoe, like I said, about 75 minutes, 1,000 square feet, 80 minutes. We hoe 5 times. We have hoeing windows through the year. April, 2 in May, 2 in June, and then we're done with the hoe, except for the edges where sunlight keeps hitting soil. So what you do, you set up a system of gardening for yourself, and you time it so when you're out there, you're not out there based on your calendar, you're out there based on the plant's calendar, how they're responding to weather, how they're responding to soil conditions, weather. And then you've got this weird relationship. It's not weird for me, but it may become weird for you, that you're actually have a sensitivity and an awareness of other living things besides humans. Every plant there now becomes a partner with you in who you are and where you're going. Because now you might be in the kitchen going, oh my gosh, I gotta get out and tend the garden. And it could be right in the middle of a good TV show or something. But you have this other connection now with these other living beings that you've committed to. And when they know you're committed to them, they're going to commit to you to stay healthy, fresh, vibrant, and they'll have a form of beauty that you perceive within them. Because I don't want to discourage you, and I don't mean this to be hurtful, but there's not a plant that's ever lived on Earth, or a plant that ever will live on Earth, that really cares how you feel or cares what you want. Not one plant on Earth cares how you feel. But that doesn't mean they can't show you how to be healthy by loving and caring for them, because they will get that in return, and that they will stay healthy and beautiful and create a beautiful emotional world for you to share with your family. And that's all it is. That could be with food too, the way you grow your food. It's a shared experience. So basically, this is the starting of our grids. We're going to continue to have more available. And the hope is that people start to get a sense of community and relationships between plants. So that, like, when you buy this plant, I mean, I would buy this instantly. Why?
Blooming.
It's blooming. This is like your first date in high school. You know, remember that? You know nothing about it, where it's going to go, who it's lived with, who does it live with on Earth, where does it live, what kind of social system does it live in? When it's reseeding everywhere, is that what you want? Is that not what you want? I don't know. It's ask more questions about the plants and see if the plant fits who you are and the nature of you and your gardening style. So we have a plant to hand out. We have a cocktail here for you. This is Echinacea pallida. It's a native plant. It's pale purple coneflower. It grows in well-drained soil. So my unreasonable request, I have an unreasonable request for all of you. Look up Echinacea pallida when you get home and see who it associates with. See who this plant lives with. Find out some of its ongoing relationships within a prairie, and then see if those plants in some other way or some other style can fit into the style of planting you have. And maybe it won't. But maybe you'll discover something so enlightening, because self-discovery is the way we all change. It's not like me standing here telling you these things. You have to discover it on your own, actually, before you make any change. It's all self-discovery. It's not being told how to do things. But I think if you take this little guy home with you and put it in the ground and nurture it to an adult, you've got a relationship here. And if it dies, don't feel bad. It might be the conditions you have just weren't right for it. But you'll find out those conditions, one, by killing it, or two, by reading about it. And even if you read about it, that doesn't mean you're going to put it in the right place, because you might have well-drained soil, but it just doesn't drain well enough. But that's how you learn. That's how you come to know the plants. Well, all right, everybody. Thank you so much. I'll take a plant. I hope there's enough here.